Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Off-Campus Science webinar, No Brother Left Behind, Using Committees to Maximize Engagement. I'm Mackenzie Lauka, and I serve AKSI as the Associate Director of Education. I'll be moderating the webcast today. So before we dive into the content, just a few housekeeping details. All participants have been started with their microphones muted and their videos turned off. We're going to ask you to keep yourselves muted throughout the presentation so we can hear David unless he asks you to unmute yourself for questions. You can feel free to turn on your video if you would like other participants and the presenter to see you if you would like. We do have the chat feature available so you can interact with other attendees and the presenter during the presentation. It will post your name, but also consider mentioning your chapter or your university as well. At the end of the presentation, we're going to have a brief Q&A, so you can either submit your questions via the chat feature then or throughout the presentation. And at that point, if you'd like to ask your question verbally, you can also unmute yourself or raise your hand and we'll unmute you. So at that point, I will hand it over to our presenter, David Greenberg, to get started.
Thank you very much, Mackenzie. So, hey everyone, how's it going? My name is David Greenberg, and I serve in a variety of roles. In Alpha Kappa Psi, I am the Northern Atlantic Regional Director, so I oversee all of our chapters from half of upstate New York, all of New England, as well as the United Kingdom. Professionally speaking, I am a professional educator, so I teach economics at the University of Connecticut, and I also teach social studies around different middle schools and high schools around the state of Connecticut as well. That's a little bit about my background, and so with that being said, let's dive right into it. So this is actually a presentation that I gave back in Boston PBLI. We had a pretty decent room full of people, so this would be a very different style, I guess, because there's 3 of you here. You have Zoom versus a room full of people back in Boston. But we'll power through nonetheless and see how we do. So the whole goal of the session here is to understand how to really maximize engagement of your brothers using committees in your chapter. And so I do want to be able to have a little bit of a discussion here with the 3 of you who are on the call. And so if we could have you guys unmute yourselves actually and introduce yourselves and answer this question, what does engagement mean to you? Real quick, we'll start off with my fellow David Tennant. If you want to introduce yourself, what chapter you're from, and what does engagement mean to you?
All right, hello, my name is David Tennant. I go to Drake University and I'm part of the Beta Phi chapter. And engagement to me is the idea that everyone is involved in one way or another, and that it is not just a group of people leading everybody, but even though those people are leading, everyone is still putting their 2 cents in and are trying to interact with everyone there.
Excellent. Thank you, David. I love that definition. Especially what I like from that definition is I like the idea of everyone being involved somehow. That's one of the ideas that we'll talk about in this presentation. All right. Next, we'll go with Matthew. Matthew, you want to introduce yourself, your chapter, and what does engagement mean to you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Matthew Redboard. I'm from the Cairo chapter at High Point University. And to me, engagement really means just, active participation and collaboration within a group, and especially when people and members can take responsibility and leadership roles or other types of roles to just, keep engaged and keep active in the chapter.
Excellent. So that idea of active engagement, perfect. Torrance, you want to introduce yourself, your chapter, and what does engagement mean to you?
Yes, my name is Torrance Bunton Jr. I am from Tennessee State University from the Chi Psi chapter, and engagement means basically getting everyone to participate in some type of role, maybe getting something like decorations for an event, putting on, helping each other out basically, so that one person isn't doing everything, everyone is helping each other out in some form or fashion.
I love that idea of helping each other out. Even if it's a sort of small role, everything counts for something. April, you want to introduce yourself, your chapter, and what does engagement mean to you?
Yeah, sorry, I was a few minutes late. I came from another class thing. But my name's April. I'm from Purdue University at the Pi Omega chapter. And to me, engagement just means doesn't mean that you have to have a defined leadership role, but that just every member, like everyone else has been participating, whether that be contributing ideas or actual manpower, and also that they're enjoying what they're doing to some extent, and they want to be there.
Good, absolutely. Two things I wanted to just highlight from that definition. One thing that you said that people are enjoying what they're doing, and then the idea also that you don't necessarily have to have a leadership title to make an impact is important to me as well. And last but not least, Nora, you want to introduce yourself and your chapter and what does engagement mean to you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Noor. I'm from George Mason University, which is the Pi Sigma chapter. And engagement to me means like all the things combined that everyone else has said. It's about getting people involved and making sure that everyone's able to work together and enjoying what they're doing at the same time, working towards like a greater goal.
Excellent. I love the idea of, again, working towards a greater goal and, again, being part of something bigger than yourself. And so when we think about the second question, I won't go around with everyone for the second question, but when we think about this, what do members need to feel engaged? It's a lot of what you guys were just saying, right? The idea of feeling involved, feeling like you are part of something greater than yourself and working towards this greater goal. The idea that you're enjoying what you're doing, right? So a lot of those same elements of what you just talked about in terms of what does engagement mean to you, that's what members need to feel engaged. And ultimately, committees are a really strong way, a really excellent way of making sure that your members and your brothers in your chapters feel that engagement, right? And so the question that I want you to think about, and I can have a few people share if you guys desire, is how does your chapter currently structure their committees? So the things that I want you to think about in your head, and you're welcome to share if you would like, is everyone participating in your committees? So does everyone actually have a committee that they're assigned to, or is it just people who feel like joining the committee join? Does everyone actually feel included? So you may have assigned everyone to a committee, but does everyone actually do something on the committee? And are people actually completing their tasks? So once your committee decides to do something, are they just sort of saying something and then sort of letting it fall to the wayside? Or are people actually following through and delivering what they said they're going to deliver once they come up with ideas? These are some of the sort of checkmark items that you want to go through throughout a semester to make sure that your committees are performing as necessary. Does anyone want to share off the top of their head about their own chapter for these questions, how your chapter is currently performing in terms of your committees?
I can go ahead and share. Sorry, this is Nora again. So we have everyone in the chapter, because we are fairly small in the scheme of things. We're about 35 members. So we do have everyone assigned to a committee of some sort. I think the problem we run into is even once we break people up into committees, it's usually one person running the show within that committee as well. So it's very hard for us to find a way to make committees work, which is kind of like why I joined this call, because I just want to see how can we get people within committees involved? How can we like break up tasks and things of that sort?
Okay, excellent. And yeah, we'll absolutely talk about that for sure. The idea of how do you get more than just, usually it's the committee head, right, who does everything, and then everyone else on the committee is just sort of there to bounce ideas.
Yeah.
Right. We'll definitely talk about that idea, because that's something that I see a lot of with different chapters. It's a very common problem to have with committees in terms of engaging everyone. Anyone else will have a similar problem, or anyone else have a different problem they want to share?
I think, well, another reason why I'm here, I'm just trying to learn more, since this is like my first year in the fraternity, and I also seen that we have problems getting people to participate in general. You know, like we put everyone in a committee. We rarely have a big size chapter here at Tennessee State, so we're just trying to get at least 95 to 100% participation from everyone. in each committee.
Okay. And when you say you have a large chapter, give us a rough estimate about how many people are you talking about?
About at least 50 to 70.
Okay. So that's quite a bit bigger than the 35% chapter we were just hearing about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm at Purdue and we have a chapter about 70 people, but we still face the same issues about committee members participating. The way we do assign committee assignments, though, is that everyone puts in their top 3 committees they would like to be in. So even though it is the preferential choice for them, we do have a difficult time getting everyone engaged, and it's most often the committee head just doing everything themselves.
Okay. Anyone else want to share before we move on?
So it's one thing I'm kind of trying to learn from this, since I'm kind of in charge of assigning and running, make sure all of our committees run, is trying to keep them more engaged. Because I mean, this past semester, all of our committees have done amazing jobs, have planned small events and done things for the chapter. But in other semesters, we've had committees that basically do nothing. And I just want to try to find some ways to make them more engaged and just keep the level that they're currently at, and probably try to improve as much as I can.
Okay. So it seems like for a lot of people, it's a very similar thing. This idea of engagement on the committees is sort of the big theme I'm really hearing. And so when you have committees, obviously there's 2 ways to engage people on those committees. You have committee chairs and you have committee members. Now, when you assign committee chairs, I think this is probably the most important thing when you're setting up the committee is how you actually assign committee chairs. So some chapters appoint them, some chapters elect them. It depends on how big the chapter is. I think smaller chapters tend to do elections for them, usually, but it depends on the chapter. Regardless of how you get them into the position, what I would encourage you to consider first and foremost is not only do committee chairs not have to be the people who already have the skills to succeed in the role, but they also don't necessarily have to be the people who have the best ideas. And what I see as, I think, one of the most common mistakes with committee chair assignments is that someone will have a lot of great ideas, and because they have the most great ideas, they get the committee chair assignment, and they get to be in charge of the committee. The problem with that is that they might have the best ideas, but they might not be the best leader. And so what I would encourage you to do is try to get the best leader for the committee in that position if you can. So by best leader, I mean, I don't mean the person who has the best ideas. I mean the person who is going to lead the committee the best, person who is going to get people involved, inspire people to be involved, actually delegate tasks. The person who has the best idea for a committee should certainly be on that committee, right? So if someone's really passionate about service and they have a million great service ideas, by all means, put them on the service committee, but don't necessarily make them the chair, because if they are just really passionate about service and they're not a great leader, what's going to happen is that they are going to go and they're going to do all the work themselves. And so when you think about what skills does a committee chair need, first and foremost, you need to be a leader and you need to be someone who is a great delegator to be a great committee chair. If you have that first and foremost in your mind when you're assigning a committee chair, then you're much more likely to get that engagement that you're looking for in your committees. Right? And then once you have someone who's a real leader and a real delegator in that role, then the people who have great ideas will be engaged by that leader, and they will be brought into the fold, and they're going to be able to do a lot of the work for the committee still. They're still going to be leaders of the chapter in that they're going to be doing so much work, and they're going to be bringing their passion to the chapter still, right? So it's not necessarily just about who has the best ideas always. The other thing I would say is in terms of how can you engage members during committee chair selection. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can either do elections, as I mentioned, for committee chairs, so that you're actually electing the leaders for each committee. And depending on how many committees you have and how many members you have, that could be one good way of doing it. The idea of that is then everyone has their say, just like your chapter officers for your e-board, and that's one good way to engage members. The other way would be to, instead of having elections, if that takes up too much of your time during chapter, to have applications that are made public and to have paper elections done based on a paper ballot and based on like paper speeches. Another way of doing that. Or you go with the classic just appointment from the e-board. But what I would recommend you do is you get multiple people involved, not just one person sitting at the. So you get multiple perspectives, and then one person who's ultimately in charge of the committee appointments. You get a little bit more perspective, and you can get more people engaged in selecting each committee chair, and ultimately, hopefully, get better committee chairs overall. Any questions on committee chairs before we move on to the committees themselves?
Um,
Nope. Okay. So then moving on to committee assignments. The idea is that then people who have great ideas but aren't necessarily the best leaders can start to develop those leadership skills on committees throughout the year. And this is really the prime opportunity for members to develop new skills and share experiences and enhance members' chapter experience. And so one half of the engagement problem is having committee chairs who engage the members and don't just do all the work themselves. So one is getting a committee chair who's going to actually actively seek the involvement and engagement of the members. But two is that you have to actually have members who are motivated to do that once the committee chair seeks it. So if the committee chair seeks engagement from the members, but then the members don't do anything, and then they might be stuck doing everything themselves sort of by default. The way to deal with that is to really sell the committee experience, the committee member experience, as a core part of AKSI and the value of AKSI, right? I was told when I first rushed AKSI, and I have repeated this a million times since then to rushes and pledges, whatever you put into AKSI, you get 10 times out. And what I quickly realized about that is 0 times 10 is 0. So if you just join AKSI and you do nothing, you're going to get nothing out of AKSI, right? The name AKSI on a resume probably is not going to get you a job unless you have to be interviewing with a AKSI brother, which happens sometimes, but is fairly rare. What you're really going to get out of AKSI is the experiences that you can then talk about in a interview. So when they ask you questions like, tell me about a time when you faced difficulty, or tell me about a time when you worked as a team member, right, and you weren't the leader. That's a common interview question. And you have experiences from AKSI that you can draw on to answer those questions. That's going to be how AKSI gets you a job. And so being active in committees, this right here is the value of AKSI. This right here is what's going to get you a job coming out of AKSI, is these kind of experiences, right, and the skills that you develop doing this, right, the teamwork skills, leadership skills. And so that's how you select your members to try to be engaged in these committees. They want to do this work because this is what they signed up for with AKSI. And if they don't want to be part of a committee and they don't want to be active, then why are they in AKSI? Like, pose that question to them even. And then what you want to think about is you want to create committees with diverse skills. So what skills do committee members need? Well, there's all kinds of different skills that committee members need. And your different brothers in your committees, or your different brothers in your chapter, are going to have all kinds of different skills that they offer. Spread those people out between different committees so that you have a diverse set of skills for each committee so that each committee can achieve what it needs to. And then also, of course, supporting people by interest is always a good way of doing it, because if you sort people by interest, then they are more likely to be engaged and more likely to want to be part of the committee actively. So any questions on committee assignments? That was quite a bit in a short period of time.
I had a quick question.
Yep.
What's the best way to assign committees or committee chairs and et cetera virtually?
Okay, sure. So in terms of how to do it virtually, What I would do is I would have people submit their preferences online via some sort of like Google form or something along those lines in terms of committee assignments for members. In terms of committee chairs, you either do elections the same way that you do it for e-board positions, either via Zoom meeting or via a paper ballot. Or you could just have the executive board choose the committee chairs via paper applications as well as the other option for committee chairs. But I would have people for committee assignments, once the chairs are filled, fill out a Google form with their preferences, and then that wouldn't necessarily be the be all end all for assigning committees. I would still think about their skills and how those skills line up with the committee needs, and then I would use a combination thereof of assigning people to committees. And if someone doesn't get one of their top two choices, I would explain to them why you assign them to the committee that they're on, and explain to them like, hey, I really think that you have this skill that would be really valuable to this committee for this reason. That way they feel engaged and they feel like they are important and they weren't ignored. They actually were thoughtfully put somewhere that's going to benefit the chapter. So, not just assigning people to committees, but also reaching out to people and explaining to them why they got certain committees that they don't get their first or second choice on their form. Is a good way of doing that to engage people.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions on this so far?
Yeah, for committee assignments, my chapter has done in the past is the vice president, they again take the preferences and then assign them themselves. Do you think this should be a process that all of eBoard has a say in, or all the committee heads themselves have a say in, or is this more of a one-man, two-man job?
So it's really up to your chapter on how to do that. I think the more people who get involved, it becomes a more difficult process, but it becomes a more engaging process. So I think if you have the whole e-board or even the committee chairs themselves involved, I think you get more opinions and you could potentially end up with a better result that way. So it definitely makes it more difficult than just one person just going and doing it, right? It would take a whole meeting and whatnot. But personally, I don't have any issue doing that if it leads to a better result, and I think it could potentially.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. When it comes to assigning, yes, the skills are very important. And let's say you have two people that have really good skills, especially to serve, let's say, on the service committee. However, like in a relationship standpoint, like personally, like they don't work well together, and maybe they cause a bad situation if you put them together.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would be a good idea to still have them there because they're good fit for the role as a whole, or split them up just because that they might hurt the committee as a whole, even though they're both skilled in that way?
I think it's very situational, and so it depends on like what the conflict is. If it's something that's really severe that it would almost certainly affect the committee, then I don't think it's unreasonable to sort of split them up onto different committees. If it's more of like a smaller thing, then I would ignore it. But I think that's where you have to, as an e-board, have some like personal judgment about what the issue is. Like, is it like two exes that can't stand each other and are bicker all the time? Because yes, then you might want to set them up and just have them on different committees so they aren't sort of bringing down the whole committee that way. If it's more, they were pledge brothers and they were on a committee together as pledges and they didn't really do great together as a team, then like that's a little bit smaller and that I wouldn't worry about as much. I think it's very situational, but it is definitely something to consider for sure.
Thank you.
So are there any other questions that I can answer for you guys?
I have another question. So on our committees, we always have the corresponding EC member like sit in and like kind of help in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be we think that's a smart idea and it's been pretty good. However, at times, sometimes the EC member takes over and doesn't the committee head do anything, or sometimes the committee thinks the EC member should be doing everything, but the EC member kind of sits back. How do you think those could find a good balance so that both work together well?
So I would have the president be very clear with each EC member that their role in the committee is to be an advisor to the committee and not to be the committee chair. And so if you make that really clear from the get-go, and then after that point, it's just coaching. So if you have an issue with a specific EC member, start to coach them up about how to be more of an advisor than someone who's really doing all the work themselves. That's not necessarily their role really in that position.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions I could answer?
This is just like a general question, not completely related with committees anymore, but if things were to go online next semester for our school, have any of you been thinking about like possible ways to just keep everyone interactive? You know, for example, if everything's online, chances are we aren't going to really have any fundraiser opportunities. A lot of that is in person, but you know, public or professional development, social, and all of these things. How do you just keep people active?
Sure. So that's something that we've been thinking about a lot, actually, because we expect that there'll be probably a good number of chapters that will likely be online in the fall. So it's something that we've been thinking about. We have this whole BU20 initiative that we're trying to do on the fraternity-wide level to try to keep people engaged with fraternity via the My AKSI community, via videos like this that we're hopefully going to continue in the fall, get more and more people on. But in terms of on the chapter level, you can also do these kinds of sessions at the chapter level using Zoom. So you can get, for example, professional speakers to come on if you can, and do talks via Zoom to your chapter. In terms of things like service, I know we've had a couple of chapters who have had success stories with service opportunities where they did a steps competition. So rather than doing their in-person marathon on campus that they're used to doing, they did this big competition where wherever you are, get as many steps in as you can, get donors that way. You can do like a big service thing for their philanthropy, which is suicide awareness and prevention. So that was Elon University that did this big thing. I know there was another university, I'm forgetting the name of it off the top of my head, that did a service thing where they, like, each person did their own service thing in their own community to help the frontline workers and healthcare workers. So there's different things you can do, even if you are online. And then it's really the challenge of the committee chair, along with the rest of the committee, to figure out how do we transition our plans to doing things online as much as possible. And some things will, I think, will be easier, like professional events will be easier. Social events will be easier than, let's say, fundraising, I think, is relatively difficult to do online, as you pointed out. But then that would be the challenge at that point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if this question is how to word this question the best, but a lot of our committee heads, they tend to be first semester members or second semester members, just because that's when they're really excited and want to be involved. That's kind of the stepping stone leadership position. But sometimes they're unprepared or just they have a hard time with that initial transition as a committee head. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily problematic to put someone who is a younger member in that position, but personally, I like to have all the members in those positions when you can, because ultimately, when you have all the members in those positions, they have a little bit more experience as leader, and they're able to lead the committee better oftentimes. Not always. So it really is, again, a case-by-case basis whether you think that young member is really ready to lead a committee, whether they should, hold off a semester or two, be on a committee first and see how it's done, and then step up and lead it after a semester or two. But I don't necessarily have a problem with putting someone who's fresh into the fraternity on a committee, especially if you're a smaller chapter. Sometimes that's just necessary in terms of the numbers.
But I guess aside from, we have transition documents that kind of outline the role, and then they can always talk to the person who held the committee position last semester, but sometimes it's hard to, create your first event or create that first idea. Do you have any maybe feedback for that? And it's kind of hard to answer.
Sure. So in terms of transition documents, what do you guys have in terms of transition documents?
It will be, of course, just the generic responsibilities of the role, and then maybe a few ideas for events, a little bit of personalized information, or personalized advice from past committee heads. I've only seen the ones from the positions I've held. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes some are more helpful than others, depending on how like detail oriented and committed the past members were to updating the document. But
It's funny because,
yeah.
sorry, it's
Go
funny
ahead.
'cause that's actually one of the other positions I had at PBLI was transitions between officers. So I actually had another position on this topic exactly. But in terms of that, one thing that you could potentially add to those documents would be like an event guide kind of
Okay.
thing where any events that you guys want to repeat that were really successful, the committee head can really document exactly what they did for that event, how they planned it, who did what for the event, and really like break it down as much as possible. And by doing that, then you're able to sort of replicate really successful events from year to year. So if you have something that's like a major day, like one of my chapters has a big event every year called Success Day, where they bring in a bunch of different professional speakers, and they have like a different panels and whatnot, and different keynotes. And it's a big thing that they do every spring. And so something along those lines, if you want to have an event that you do from year in, year out, that you're proud of, sort of a flagship event, then really document that as much as possible in that, so they have something to work off of as much as possible.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a good idea.
You're welcome. Full of them.
All right, we are at 3:30. So David, do you have any final pieces of advice for our attendees?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive all in all. And then I'll leave it to you to tell them how many great opportunities we have coming up.
All right, so first off, thank you, David, for your time and for sharing all the knowledge that you've shared with us today. And thank you to all attendees for joining us. Hopefully you're able to gain some good information from this presentation. So quick reminders, make sure you guys log into the My AKSI community where you can engage with other brothers in the collaboration groups and register for more upcoming events on the events tab. So thank you all for attending, and we'll see you in the My AKSI community.
Thank you.